Hi guys, today you are in for an early Easter treat because I'm uploading my Nexus 6P early observations for now. And while I'm doing that, I just decided to now record the rambling for this week already on Friday. I woke up early so I have the time and I will use it. So let's get ready to ramble! First topic for today, and just in case, I would have wished to use the other set that I usually find a little bit more comfortable for making the ramblings, but since I moved my microphone from here to this side, I have to find a solution first to attach another microphone, maybe my Zoom H1, to the camera so I can actually use it, because I don't want to move that one anymore because it's attached to a different part of the table, and I noticed while it was on this part, I had bad, terrible vibrations and super hard bass if I touched or if I banged against the table. Something I didn't usually notice on my speakers, but on the headphones it was terrible, and I'm sorry for all the people who maybe watched any review with that, because it sounded horrible. So first topic today would be, why does no phone give us full notification control for the LED? This is something that I personally absolutely don't get, because a lot of phones these days have notification LEDs and even multicolored ones. There are a few ones that maybe have one or two colors, but for example, the Samsung Galaxy S7 multicolor, the Nexus 6P multicolor, the Nexus 5X multicolor. They all have multicolor, but they don't support it at all. They don't make any proper use of it. What they all do is show you red when the battery is low and maybe show you green when it's fully charged, and then you have one color with one pattern for the notifications, and I don't get why they don't give you full proper access for. Okay, on the Nexuses I get it, because they want you to use ambient display, which I absolutely personally don't like, because I don't want to turn on the screen, or the screen to turn on every time, because so many times I just use my phone in the hand, just have it in my hands, and I don't want the screen to be turned on all the time. So why not just give me any way to customize the notification settings? Because for example, now I use an app for that on the S7. Actually, I turned off my notification LED, because at least on the S7 it seems quite buggy for now, and Samsung of course uses something a little bit proprietary, and it doesn't really work that well with those apps. So what I use is an app that actually turns on the screen for a little bit amount of a time, where it actually kind of shows you, it could show a little bit of an LED, which would be part of the screen though, but what it can also do is show you the app icon that then flashes like the notification LED, something I found super handy. The app is called, just in case you maybe ask for it, I think it's LED Blinker Pro. Costed like $2 or $3, but it was totally worth it, because on an AMOLED display it shouldn't really drain too much more battery, and yeah, I would otherwise maybe use though the LED. But the good thing is, usually the LED here on the S7 for example is on the top, but usually I have my phones upside down in my pocket, and when I want to check if I got a message, I have to take out the whole phone to see the message on the bottom. But on LED Blinker Pro I can use this LED screen, I think they call it LED screen or something like that, or screen LED. You can make that actually appear on the bottom, and then I only have to just slightly take out the phone to see if I got a notification, something that is super handy. You can also change the vibration pattern for the phone, or for every notification set a different notification sound for everything. Of course it is, I think since Marshmallow, a little bit more limited, because usually it could take off over the whole process and customize everything for you. But since Marshmallow, what I got from it, you have to turn off the notification in the app and then LED Blinker Pro to take off or take over all the things. Otherwise you get double notifications, and this is an issue that I had at the beginning, because for example on Studio you can't just turn on or turn off notifications. If I turn them on, then I choose a different sound in the LED Blinker app, I had two notification sounds, so I had to turn off the one at least. So wherever you have the option, for example Phoenix, it's great, you can choose the LED, the vibrate and the sound. And if you turn all those three off and set them in LED Blinker, you have full control. So this is something that I would really wish for to see on inbuilt OSs already. So if we have all those capabilities, why don't manufacturers make use of them? And I would like to know from you, do you actually use the LED? Because I really rely on it. I really like it a lot. I prefer it over ambient display because I just want to see what kind of, or from what app I get a notification. That is all I want, but not to stretch this anymore. The next point would be, why am I so harsh in reviews? That is one thing, because usually what pretty much every reviewer does is kind of make a review and show mostly off the good stuff of a phone, and most of them maybe sugarcoat or leave out the bad stuff out. Something I personally don't like, and maybe that's just a habit of mine, but what I usually tend to do is point out actually more of the bad things first. A lot of people don't like that, especially if they bought this phone, they want a justification to buy the device, and if they then get all the negative stuff, they don't want to hear this. But why I do this, because I'm okay if someone gets a device and then hears something bad and maybe hates me for that, bashes me or trolls in the comments. This is okay for me because of one thing. I rather have someone to be a little bit pissed because he still likes his phone and I talked about something bad, than someone to buy this phone without me having said the bad stuff and then regretting it. Because that's my main intention why I ever started doing reviews, to give people all the information so not to regret the purchase. I rather point out a little bit too much details, too much annoying things, too much nitpicky stuff people wouldn't usually care about. But if they do, at least they got the information from me. And rather than, for example, buying a device, if I told just the great stuff, because the great stuff is pretty much obvious on every phone. You get the good stuff to find out really early. Because if all the reviews point out all the great stuff, this is pretty much what you would expect, especially from a mid-ranger or a higher mid-ranger and a flagship. You know what good things to expect. But you often don't know what there is maybe to know that isn't that great. Maybe the battery life isn't that good. Maybe the screen isn't quite as accurate. The camera has some issues here, or the software lags a little bit here. And I rather point that out, have a little bit of flag for that, but then people notice, and once they buy it, they are at least aware of it, or they don't regret their purchase if they don't buy it because of those things. So this could be the thing, because a few people sometimes already told me, oh, good that I knew that, because otherwise I would have purchased it. And I'm more happy if you actually don't buy a certain device after my review than actually bought one. And this is the other thing, because I made a video for the YouTuber sellouts and talked about that brands usually want people that are very influential and to make you buy these devices. And I said I'm usually the one that kind of makes you want to not buy something, at least if it's not a worthy product. So this is the way why I do things the way I do them. The next thing would be the Apple event. Let's quickly talk about the iPad Pro 9.7 inch and the SE. I will talk about the SE a little bit first. So what is it? It is a 5S with the guts of the 6S, but a little bit toned down. So the size is still 4 inches. And now I saw a lot of people wanting that. And I saw a lot of people saying it's too small, but some actually are happy that they are now flagship in this size range available, because Android doesn't really have any 4-inch flagship. The closest thing we have is the Sony Xperia Z5 Compact, which is still 4.6 inches. And just a little bit of a small story. I have a colleague at work who still uses, I think it is his 5S, maybe it could be his iPhone 5. And it's 4 inches, and we always see him getting a little bit hard times because it's so small. And when some of the guys that I work with, they don't have the best eyes anymore, they see at the screen, they say, whoa, it's so tiny, and why do you have still this phone? And he said he will keep using this phone, and that was way before the SE was announced. And he said, I will stick with the 5S until it breaks, and I will even buy it once again if I have to, if they don't make any smaller phones anymore, because even the 4.7 inch was way too big for him, and no Android phone is capable enough in this size range. And he said he likes the form factor, it is perfect for him, perfect for one-hand use, and he will stick to this. So I get that there definitely must be some demand, otherwise Apple wouldn't have done that. And after talking to him, I agreed with him, because I actually know even one colleague that still has a 3.5 inch iPhone. I think it's the 4. And he has big paws. So really, and the phone actually almost completely gets lost in his hand, but he's okay with that, and there are few people out there, so it's definitely legit. But of course we have a few drawbacks. We don't have the Touch ID anymore, we don't have Force Touch, so it is still a watered down version. They could make it therefore cheaper, which here isn't really that cheap, because it's still, I think, like $490, and $490 for a high-end phone is still great, but you also have to consider it's just 4 inches, so it should be just a little bit cheaper, just because it is smaller and even watered down. If it would be a fully legit X6S in a smaller form factor, I would be fine with the price. But yeah, I guess for Apple it's okay, and people will definitely like it. I think it will be selling quite good after all. Now let's talk about the iPad Pro 9.7. I'm not quite even sure how it's actually called. So I still have my iPad Air 2, and I don't see myself really that tempted to get the iPad Pro. First of all, why? First, for what I do on a tablet is mostly content consumption, a little bit social media and all that, and I can still perfectly fine do this on the iPad Air 2. I don't need the extra horsepower. I definitely don't need the pen, because if you saw any of my reviews that I use the device with a pen, you know that I can't do shit with it. I can't draw at all. I never could. I can't even properly write. My handwriting is terribly ugly, and on those glass surfaces it's even harder. I had once a Toshiba device with a matte screen with a minimal texture, and that one actually felt like you would write on paper, and this is the way to go for. If you have a stylus, you definitely prefer something like this, because this one felt so natural. But on all the glass devices that I had, the writing experience wasn't great, so that's definitely not something for me. But even on 9.7 inches seems to maybe be quite tempting for many. What I don't get at all is the protruding camera. Why does it have to stick out? Because why do people even use a camera on a 9.7 inch? I would have been fine with anything that wouldn't have protruded, but because I really like that my iPad Air 2 sits flush on the table. I meant flush. So yeah, of course the extra power is nice, but it would have been nice that if we have gotten a mix in between something the Air 2 and between the iPad Air Pro. So I would have liked to have maybe a little bit more performance, but I definitely don't need the pen. I definitely don't need the better camera, and I would have wished for to pay a little bit less, because in dollars at least, $679, it's way too much, because I got an iPad Air 2 for $470, and these days you can get it even below $400, which is in terms of value way better, and it gets the job done still. So not quite so sure about that. What is something that I'm really looking forward to though is the new MacBooks, even though unfortunately I won't be able to review anyone or any of those, because I definitely won't buy one and I won't get a review unit. So, but it's definitely nice to see what they will come up with, because what I think will be happening, from what I read, a MacBook successor will come with a little bit of a refresh, and they don't want to even make a big announcement, but the MacBook Pro 13-inch will have an integrated or discrete graphics this time. I think something around the maybe GTX 940 or something, I would say. If they manage to get a 950, and even better, but I think it will be more something like a 940 to be more competing with the Surface Book. And of course, the 15-inch will be even more powerful with the Skylake, with, I think, what should they put in? A 960 should be the minimum. I'm not quite so sure if they can manage a 970 in there. Let me quickly think. It will be hard in terms of thermals and battery life and all that, but I think a 960 is pretty much a given. That's all I think so far. The iPad SE, the iPhone SE, nice for anyone who wants it. The iPad Pro, just too expensive. The next one would be the lower mid-range is stagnating, and I noticed this year reviewing the LG's first line of new K device. I had the LG K10 with a Snapdragon 410, and I had I still have the LG K4, which I'm going to review I think tomorrow. And what I noticed is that the lower mid-range that still uses those 400 series of Snapdragon devices are stagnating, because if I'm not completely wrong, we are using the 400 series, the 400 and 410 for already 2 years. The Moto G the first one had already a 400, then the second one bumped it up to a 410, And the third generation still used the 410. And if I see a device like the LG K10 being released in 2016 with still a 410, I see that there is definitely some stagnation, because you don't really have to buy this one. You can just buy the previous model, the last year's model, with still the 410. The performance will be pretty much the same. The only difference that I noticed was that the new one seems a little bit more optimized. But in the case of the LG K10, it actually makes sense to maybe get this one instead of an older one, because it overall has great qualities. But just in the case, for example, on the LG K4, 540, yeah, it's only a 480p screen, and this one is available, I think, with just a MediaTek SoC. And even if the slightly more higher end version, I think the K5 or whatever there is in between, the K7, still only use an 410 as well. And I see this on so many other devices, and especially something like, for example, I reviewed the Samsung Galaxy A5 2016, which in my version had the Exynos, which was quite capable and definitely nice, but last year's A5 had on Snapdragon 410, and the 2016 version in different regions where it still uses the Snapdragon also only has a 410, which I'm not quite so sure how well it performs with a 1080p display, because it performed quite okay on the Exynos. Not quite so sure, because I've never used the Snapdragon 410 device on a 1080p. With 720p it works really good. Not quite so sure about 1080p, but this is where I see some stagnation, because there are already successors to the 410 out. I think there is something like a 415. The mid-range though, the premium mid-range and a little bit slightly higher mid-range, they definitely will show a little bit of improvement, because if at least there is a Snapdragon 617 in it, maybe a 650 or 652, and you should get quite a great, actually close to flagship performance, because the 617 that I used on the A9 performed really great. And if, from what I see on benchmarks, which don't mean anything, and I've talked about that on Twitter, because just a quick example, the S7, 115, 120,000 on Antutu. The Nexus 6P, I think like 55. So almost double for the S7. And if I would have to choose the better performer, it would still be the 6P. So this shows me once again why I never use benchmarks. And this is something actually someone actually mentioned in a comment recently, and he said, couldn't you add benchmarks in your videos just for people to see where they could kind of expect the device to be? And I said, no, I definitely won't, because the performance of benchmarks alone doesn't show you anything. You won't really know how good it is, because I'm pretty sure every 615 Snapdragon will give you better results than a 410 does. But I still think the 410 overall performs noticeably better than the 615. So benchmarks aren't worth anything. And then actually someone a little bit later in another video commented that he found it great that I review the performance in real life and don't mention any benchmarks. And I said, yes, a lot of people already asked me to include benchmarks, but I won't do it because they are absolutely useless. It gives you the highest score, and maybe if you have similar devices with, maybe let's say 2 devices with a Snapdragon 820, you could see the one has a little bit more, it could be better. But I don't think that, for example, everyone likes to use Antutu, but once I saw a difference of X2 on the S7, but not seeing even close to that in terms of real life performance, I said, from now on I will completely ignore it, which I pretty much did already all the time. So, but once again, if we take a look at those benchmarks, the 652 seems to be on a level of the 808 or even 810, so really well performer if well optimized. So I am at 19 minutes or about. So what was the next one? The next thing would be the Samsung Galaxy S7. And there was a comparison between the Exynos version and the 820 version. I will link that up in the info card and also in the description. I just saw that today because I was actually waiting for some of these videos to be released. Of course, it's quite hard for many reviews to get both of them because they are regionally kind of locked. At least you can't get them normally both in one region, and the Exynos definitely seems to be the way better overall SoC in the S7. We can't really say if it won't perform a lot better in something like the HTC 10, because from benchmarks that really don't show anything, it seems to be a lot better than the Snapdragon 820 version of the Samsung Galaxy S7, but still, They did a run through, they opened a lot of apps, checked them, and I think it was 1 minute 27 on the Exynos version, where it was 1 minute and 36 on the Snapdragon version. So you can see there's only already a difference of 9 seconds in this run through. But the biggest difference was the actual multitasking test, where they go through all the apps once again to see which of them had to reload and which of them hadn't. And here the ending was like, I think 2 minutes and 5 for the Exynos version and like 2 minutes and 40 seconds for the Snapdragon version. And what you would have seen if you watched the video, that on the Exynos version, pretty much all of the apps were still in RAM. Just few had to reload a little bit, but the Snapdragon 820 version had to reload pretty much every app right from scratch. And I'm not quite sure why they had to make that, because both use 4 gigabytes of RAM. So at least the multitasking shouldn't be impacted. Of course, the loading times, the first test, if the Exynos has the bigger or the quicker access times, that would make sense. But why does the Snapdragon have to relaunch all the apps where the Exynos can handle that? Because this is something that I definitely used in or noticed in my use. On first reviews, or let's say hands-on, because I didn't want to see any reviews yet. A lot of people have been still complaining about TouchWiz lag and apps to reload quite early on the Snapdragon version. And I said on my version, on the Exynos version, I don't see any of that. My apps are still quite in a good number and of amount in the RAM. I can multitask really, really nicely, and lag? Not really a bare minimum. There is some minimal TouchWiz lag still obvious, but something that I just actually noticed after using the Nexus 6P, because before that I thought it works really, really flawless. The browsing performance is still something that I don't like so much, but this is up for a review that I hope will be done in about a week. And something that is really odd, why did my monitors turn off? This is something that I don't get. So either I don't, no, I still have. So I don't really have my monitors to turn off, but they did. I have to check that, sorry about that. So where was I? Yes, so this seems to definitely be the way better performer overall. I am happy that I got the Exynos. And it also shouldn't get as warm, and the battery life should be better. So it almost looks like some of the Snapdragon 820 users or people that are in that region have been screwed a little bit. And maybe it's maybe not even the best phone out there. Yeah. The next thing would be, if you could mix 2 best phones together, available ones, which one would those be? So take any 2 phones, the best, and I want it to be available. Because if you would just say, make the dream phone, a lot of those things then are imaginary and speculative. But take the best things of 2 phones, merge them together. Which 2 phones would that be? For me, it would be, I think so, the Nexus 6P for right now with the S7. And what would I mix and in what way? And I want to know that from you. So make such a list as well. So what I would like from the 6P would be stereo front facing. This would be nice. Of course, this would be hard to realize, or yeah, on the S7, but I want the feel in hand from the S7, the size, which then again, then it would be hard to get those front-facing stereo speakers. Premium feel, great in-hand feel from the S7. The display from the S7. The sound, of course, from the Nexus 6P. Performance as well from the Nexus 6P. Battery life, can't really say so much for now, but if we would merge them together, either way, it would be great battery life. Software, if I would have to choose just for one, without being rooted on average consumer level, without any modifications, I would even go for TouchWiz. Because, of course, if I would use it as my own device, then I would go for stack Android, so I could root it and use custom ROMs. But I think just in terms of functionality and overall more mainstream capabilities and modifications due to the custom theme engine, I would go for the S7, because I really like the themes that they have now, because I'm not the biggest fan of the sheer design of a pure Android device. It works out great, but it's a little bit too bare, too minimum for me. And the camera, I would, let's say, I want the front facer from the from the Nexus, because it's so much sharper. I said that on my 6P review. The front facer of the S7 is pure garbage, totally bullshit, shit, and I can't stretch that often enough. I think it's way too blurry. The good thing is though that I don't care about it, because I don't use the front facing camera anyways. But it's so blurry, not detailed, not sharp at all. And the back camera, hard to choose. I would like the sharpness maybe from the Nexus and a mix of the S7, because I still think the S7 in low light performs better, but outside it is just a little bit a tad too warm. Still quite sharp, and I have to check that. I will, once the weather is a bit better, check that more. But I am a big fan of the Nexus 6P camera, at least from what I saw on the Nexus 5X, and this won't change. So I think either way, one of those two cameras would be amazing. I have to make it quick because my time is running out. Shout out of the week goes to Juan Carlos Bagnell from Pocket Now, which was previously on his own channel, Some Gadget Guy. And I definitely don't need to give him a shout out because he's way bigger than me. But what I think so great about it and why I wanted to give him the shout out this week is how still down to earth he is, even though he's now on a big channel. But even when he was still only on Some Gadget Guy, he was approachable. He always replied on comments. He always looked out for or searched for the interaction on Twitter, on Google Plus, on the YouTube comments, made his weekly podcast with actually getting into a lot of the comments that he got to get that even further out. So I think he makes that great, and since he's on Pocket Now, of course there will be some changes. He won't be able to comment as great as he could have on Some Gadget Guy, but for, but it seems to be quite solid for now what he does, and I really like his work. If you know him either from Some Gadget Guy or from Pocket Now, you, I think, will agree with me that he makes a great job, and he's definitely a great addition and a really, really good successor to Michael Fisher, which I still don't get why he changed to Mobile Nations, which we should see in a few weeks or months. Not quite so sure why he made that change, because he was the big boss on Pocket Now, but he's just one of many on Mobile Nations. I don't quite get that. So, what's coming soon? The S7 review will be coming soon. I hope in a week or so. The Nexus 6P could take about 2 weeks because I still have to review the LG K4. Then I have the Dell Venue 8 that I almost don't want to review because I did almost not use it because I don't like this device for a few reasons I will definitely mention in the review. What else is coming? Not quite so sure, but that's the main things. Definitely what I will be doing is compare the S7 the shit out of against every device that I get this year. I will compare with the 5X, which I will make a re-review as well because I was asked to make a re-review maybe with the newest update, and I definitely noticed the difference. I had the normal version that was still on there, and I got the update, and the update definitely made some improvements in terms of performance. Usually it's more of a placebo effect, but I definitely mostly noticed a huge bump in terms of performance and smoothness in Google Plus. In other aspects, maybe not so much. 6P comparison with the S7 will come, even though there's quite a big difference in terms of size, but if you maybe take a look at the S7 Edge, this could still be a legit comparison, and I will compare with everything else that I get just because I have it, and my comparisons with last year's S6 were quite popular, so there seems to be a demand for that. Other than that, I think I'm done. The video is almost half an hour again, and I was actually asked one thing, and I maybe want to make that a poll. Would you be interested in a live rambling? Because that would make the interaction live, and I could make these videos a little bit longer. I wouldn't have to edit them anymore. Of course, they would be even more so rough. So if you like the rough approach, the casual approach, this could be even more so much. But then you could get the chance to interact with me and make live questions and all that. Because I wanted to do this already for quite a while, and I was asked for it for quite often. But I wasn't quite sure, because the good thing is in the ramblings I can make the time codes for the people who want it. I have a better video quality, better audio quality. But if there is a demand, so there will be a poll. Do we want it or don't you want it? Or is there an interest? Yes, the video will stop any minute now, actually any second. So wish you nice holidays for Easter if you celebrate that and all that. And leave me nice feedback, leave me likes, subscribes, anything else. The video will be done, and let's just wait for it because it's already now 2